Oh, that'd be fine. All right, amen, amen. Good to be saved?
Amen.
Good to be in church?
Amen.
Okay, see if you say that when it's all over. All right, I'm going to mention a couple things about the book table, only because we're desperate. But I got a couple things out there that are new. This is that is the fourth edition of the Understandable History book, Understandable History of the Bible. That is, let's see. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is about the 8th printing. This is different in from the third edition in that I had 50 pages on two split subjects. One is the English Standard Version, which is kind of like the current hot item amongst the fundamentalists or liberals or whatever they are, and then also information on the MEV, Modern English Version. And the Modern English Version, some people are being caught up with it because they say, well, it comes from the Textus Receptus. And I'll just tell you up front, I was surprised when I looked at the MEV, because it's actually, the New King James isn't good, but the MEV isn't as good as that. But I will tell you this. We were talking about, Brother Craig, we were talking about your brother going home yesterday. Mike Collingwood, back in 1987, the very first edition of that book was printed by his brother, Mike Collingwood. And they printed 1,000 of them. It was a little white-covered book about that big, and we sold that, and that paid the printing for the answer book, and just back and forth over the years. But that's how this whole thing got launched, through Mike's efforts. But anyway, so that is back there. This one, I kind of wrote this by accident. It's called Why We Believe the King James Bible. And Bible Literature Missionary Foundation, they're down in Shelbyville, Tennessee. They've done most of my printing for about 35 years. And about 2-3 years ago, Brother Bobby Lamont, they were celebrating their 50th anniversary. So he called me up and he said, we're having a 50th year commemorative Bible printed up, and we'd like something in there on why we believe the King James Bible. So I wrote him up about 16 pages, and when I'm doing it, I'm thinking, boy, this would be a good book. So I add a little bit to it. It is about 27 pages, but it's a great handout. When somebody says, hey, why do you guys believe? There it is. Now, you can see the difference between a real brief answer and an in-depth answer, but if you just want to give something to somebody, that may be a good one. And then if you're familiar with the answer book, it's the little book that looks like this, only it's got a dark blue cover. And that's been, I think, about 10 or 11 printings. This is the second answer book. The first answer book covers charges brought against our King James Bible, about 62 of them. This one starts at number 63 and goes to number 90. Some of the stuff that's covered in here is where should a Bible believer begin in defending their Bible? I get this a lot. People say, well, where do I start as far as, when I'm going to talk to somebody about this, what's the first thing I ask? And so that's covered. This is one. Isn't the Bible settled in heaven? That's kind of one of those liberal things that they hide. Well, the Bible's settled in heaven. Yeah, but I need one for visitation. Isn't the King James Bible written in Old English, which we will deal with tonight? What's the difference between the fats and the vats in different King James Bibles? I deal with that. Can you correct the originals with the King James Bible? That is in here. Aren't conservative translations trustworthy? And several others. In fact, as I speak, the third answer book, which would be after this one, this goes to 90. That one goes from 91 to, I think, 125. As far as charges brought against our Bible. So those are out there on the table. But guys, look, I want you to think you have to go by and buy something, because you sure don't. You can feel free just to go by and leave money. All right, we're going to talk about the King James Bible, because even King James Bible believers labor under a misconception that the King James Bible is written in Old English. Now, part of the reason is because of the font that was used and the spelling. The font that was used, we would call it Gothic. It's very ornate, ye old print shop, that kind of stuff. But the fact is that Geneva, which actually came out before the King James, 1557 was New Testament, 1560 was the Old, used Roman type, just like the King James. I have no idea why Barker, the printer for the King James, used that type, because it's very hard to read. It is just not easy to read. And then you have things like son, spelled S-O-N-N-E, and things like that. I can show you in a King James Bible the word said, spelled 4 different ways in one book. It's spelled S-A-I-D, S-A-I-D-E, S-A-Y-D, S-A-Y-D-E. You say, well, that's a mistake. The smallest unit of preservation promised to us is not a letter. The smallest unit of preservation promised to us is a word. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but what? My words. And when you have to explain this to people, because I tell people, the guys engage in what I call conviction poker, which is I'll see your conviction and raise your conviction. And so you say you believe the King James Bible, and they go, well, you believe the words, I even believe the letters. And then they'll go through that VATS charade. And you ask them, well, what's the smallest unit of preservation? A jot or a tittle. And a jot is like the dot of an I, and a tittle's like the cross of a T. Okay, there's two problems wrong with that statement. Two problems with that statement. Number one, the Lord said that the jots and tittles would be around until the law is fulfilled. Do we know somebody who fulfilled the law? Yeah. So by the cross, it was all taken care of. So we don't need the jots and tittles. But the second thing is actually a misrepresentation. They always say a jot is like the dot of an I. Let me ask you this. Is the dot of an I a freestanding letter? No, it is not. A jot is. Is the cross of a T a freestanding letter? No, it is not. But a tittle is. So the smallest unit of preservation is a word, and so God preserves the words. Now, I want you to know I am not in favor of changing the spelling. I don't trust the people in the printing companies, okay? I really don't. I guess it's the conspiracy theory that runs in me, but I don't want them to mess with my book. But we're going to talk tonight about Old English and Middle English and English. What we're talking about is the history of the Bible in English, in our language. I got some stuff here to pass. Guys, I guess you can pass these out if you got those, or sell them to them if you can. Make them pay. Yeah, why don't you do one per household, and if you got some more extras, if you got some extras, brother, just let them know, and then somebody can put their hand up to get them. Have you ever heard anybody say this? There's like 200 English Bibles out there. You ever hear that? Well, fact is that there have been 560, and you're holding the list in your hand. This list is a compilation of a couple that I found, and then I've added probably 150 that were either overlooked or more recent to it. But we're going to look at this list, and you can take that home with you. That way you don't have to say there's 560. How do you know? Because some guy said that. Doesn't mean a thing. You got the evidence in your hand. If you have that, what I want you to notice, and when you get it, is that first off, there was never a complete Bible printed in Old English. Never. There was only one ever done in Middle English, which is very famous. We'll talk about that. But here's the thing. People say, well, the King James, it says these and thous, and that's Old English. Actually, your King James Bible, believe it or not, is the first version ever printed in a solidified modern English. Old English developed around 450 and continued till about 1100, okay? Well, I think you can see that's like it passed out of usage about 500 years before the King James Bible was even translated. And if you say, well, no, the King James is Old English. Okay, then what does this say? Si gumma Geshek ba Quen. Well, if you read Old English. See, I tell guys, you and I cannot read Old English. We could not read Old English. We could not read Middle English. But this is a very important statement here. It says, the man saw the woman. Guys, that's a very important statement. Sio quen geshek bon guman. Well, that's the other half of the equation. The woman saw the man and ran. But the reason I want those up there is because you can say it over and over and over. The King James Bible is not written in Old English, but you can see from that not you, not I, we cannot understand Old English. We could not recognize it. We could not read it. Now, have you got your papers? Do this. Okay. We'll skip over the top here. You can look at that later, but where it talks about the foundation, Old English, and these are, in Old English, there were only 8 printings of some portion of the Bible in English. If you look at your paper, the earliest was 735, the latest was 990, and what you have in there is you have 2 copies of Psalms in Old English, 2 copies of the Gospel, 2 copies of the Pentateuch, which are the first 5 books of the Bible, and then 1 of the Gospel of Matthew and 1 of the Gospel of John. But that's all that's ever been translated into Old English, and again, we couldn't read it, we couldn't understand it. And then you'll look next, it talks about on the front page there, Middle English, and incidentally, there were 8 also in Middle English. Now, Middle English went from about 1100 to 1450. So to think about that, that's still about 150 years before your King James Bible was translated. Middle English ceased to be used as a language. And if you say, well, I think it's in Middle English, okay. Laud me, stirs not want sal me. Tell me what that says. Do you know what you all know what that says? Everybody in this room knows what that says. The Lord is my shepherd. But you see, guys, we can't read Old and we can't read Middle. And so your King James Bible is not, well, you know what? There was a glass of water around here somewhere. Does anybody know what happened to it? The guys that moved the pulpit, did you steal my water? Okay, thank you very much. I also need some notes. Or we take an offering, we could stall that way. In Middle English, there was 1 copy of the Gospel and the book of Acts, 1 copy of Revelation from the French. Well, who would want that? 2 copies of Psalms. 1 was just portions of the New Testament. 1 was of the Gospels. 1 was of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, and the first 4 of the New Testament, the Gospels. And then probably the most important, and really, it was the beginning. This was like the beginning of a snowfall, and it was 1380, and it was the printing of the Wycliffe Bible. You know, we moved out to Idaho about 4 years ago, and one thing that Idaho is known for is mild winters, kind of like Toledo. Really mild winters. I mean, you know, it might snow during the day, but by the next day, it all melts off. And we were staying in the house next to the church one Wednesday, and it started to snow. Okay, first year I was there. Thank you very much, brother. It started to snow, and snow is such a non-issue there that the church doesn't even own a plow truck, or most people don't own a plow truck. The church has a little John Deere Gator with a blade on it, and the poor guy that plows snow is open to the elements. And it started to snow about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 5 o'clock, I mean, it was like it was a little snow, it was pretty snow, it was, well, that's a lot of snow. And I told Kathy, I said, he is going to get swamped. So I threw a snow shovel in my pickup truck, and I went over and I said, look, I'll shovel around the doors. And he said, look, I got a little John Deere lawn tractor with a blade, and he said, if you'll plow the small walks with that. And so he started about 1 o'clock, I started about 5 o'clock, and literally we plowed snow right through the service, the midweek service, until about 11:30 that night. But you know when it started? It just started. You ever see how it starts like a nice little snow? And then it keeps coming and coming and coming. Well, the Wycliffe in 1380 was like, that was the beginning of the flurries. That was the beginning of the Bible in English. I am going to say this. I say this with a little asterisk because I'm not prepared to stand on this. I have always said that the Wycliffe came from the Latin Vulgate, Jerome's Latin Vulgate, the corrupt one that follows the Alexandrian manuscripts. There may be evidence that it did not. There may be evidence that the Wycliffe Bible did indeed do an end run around the Alexandrian family of manuscripts and was actually from the Textus, well, not the Textus Receptus, but the Greek that the Textus Receptus we know of came from. So the reason I'm telling you both is because, you know, like when I teach, I tell my students something. I say, look, guys, I'm not sure of this, but I want you to hear it. I want you to know it. I want you to be aware and familiar with it. So there's a chance that the Wycliffe Bible was indeed from the Antiochian manuscripts. Now, if you look at this, and down at the bottom, it talks about modern English, and modern English started about 1450 and is still gone. In fact, it would do well to stop, actually. But modern English was 450. Now you guys, you guys build houses, you put basements, correct? Right? Okay. When I built houses in Florida, there's no basements, and in Idaho, they don't build basements. A lot of the houses, like ours, we have a crawl space, but some of them they put the concrete down. And if you know anything about concrete, there's two kinds of concrete. There's the stuff they poured yesterday, and that's concrete. And then there's the very same slab about a month later, and that is concrete. That is capital letters flashing off and on. And so you say, what's it doing? It's setting up. When they pour it, it has to set up. So, and cure. And that's actually what took place here. What took place in the English language was, it went from Old English right around here to Middle English, and then around 1450 began the development of modern English. And believe it or not, that really went on until about 1600. And right around 1600, the very last, best way I can say it is the last instabilities in the language cured. There were some pronoun changes that took place at the end of the 17th century, the 1500s, or into the 16th century. And so English was not a reliable enough language to really, to give us a perfect Bible. Which may have something to do with why some of the English Bibles before the King James, never caught fire like the King James did. But what you'll find, if you look here in your paper, and some of the most famous ones, look on the back of the first page, you have William Tyndale's. And by the way, William Tyndale did not translate the entire Bible. He translated the New Testament, portions of the Old. Then he was caught. He was strangled. They tied him to the stake and strangled him before they burned him. But he was burned at the stake. The last thing he said was his dying prayer. If you look at the last part of that paragraph, it says his dying prayer was, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." And he got that prayer answered. And you hear about Henry VIII, and they talk about Henry VIII. You know, I think he had one wife after another because he wanted a male heir. And something was wrong with these women. They were all broke, gave him daughters. That's what he thought. But so he wanted to get rid of his wife, and the Catholic Church wouldn't let him. So he just did away with the Catholic Church. And he started the Anglican Church, or the Church of England, which is basically it is the same format as the Catholic Church, except the head of the church is the King of England instead of the Pope in Rome. But we used to call it, when I was Roman Catholic, we used to call Episcopalians and Lutherans, they were Catholics that flunked Latin. But here's what he said. He said he wanted the Bible to be translated into English, into the vulgar English. Now, guys, if we talk about somebody being vulgar, we think they're using foul language, correct? But vulgar simply means common. That's why if I can use this word, original Latin, the Latin of 150 A.D., it was a Latin copy of the Antiochian text that your King James Bible is from. And that Bible became so popular that they called it, in Latin, they called it the Common Bible. But in Latin, the word for common is vulgar. So it was known as the Vulgate because it was common. And then about 1680, the Roman Catholic Church was having trouble because all these people are reading this Latin Bible that came out of Antioch, and it was kind of messing up their religious services. So they had Jerome translate the corrupt Alexandrian text into Latin and named it the Vulgate. Now, I'm sure in this list farther along, I think it's in the 20th century, somewhere back there, somebody brought out a new translation. Now let me ask you a question. If it's a new translation, and let's say they published it today, you could call it the newest translation, right? You could even make a claim, it wouldn't be true, but you could even make a claim that it's the most accurate translation. But if it just came out today, how many people do you think got it? So you couldn't call it the Common Bible. And yet, some decades ago, somebody brought out an English translation and named it the Common Bible, which is kind of like, how can you do that when nobody's even got it? And that's what the Roman Catholic Church did. They took Jerome's brand new corrupted Latin and named it the Vulgate, the Common Bible. Therefore, when you read history and you read that the church was embracing the Vulgate, you think they were embracing Jerome's corrupt text. The problem was that everybody ignored Jerome and his 380 Latin translation. And then the Catholic Church found out how to make theirs popular and get rid of the other one. They gathered up all of the old Latin Vulgates and their owners and burned them. And that pretty much put a stop to it. The old Latin Vulgate, now if you deal in the manuscripts, it is now known as the Italic. But that is the old Vulgate. That was the one that the church used. So, when Tyndale, his New Testament came out in 1525, he was doing something that was illegal. The Roman Catholic Church had proclaimed that you could not read a Bible in prayer in English. You could not pray in English. Punishable, are you ready for this? By death. That's why Tyndale had to go outside of England to print his Bible. But he died on the stake, and in comes Henry VIII, and he said, I want my people to have a Bible in their language. And I'm going to give you guys a word, and if you could get anything through your head, get this word through, because I'm going to show you one of the most important words in history. Common. You know, I told you I wrote about 30-some books on the King James issue or some other stuff. And the Bible issue can be very technical. You're studying a lot of Greek manuscripts and such. And when you write a book, like the Understandable History, when you write a book, you have two audiences, and you cannot address both. You have to choose one or the other. And the two audiences that you can address are academia or the common guy in the pew. Now, if you address academia, you'll get this. I get these guys, they come to my meetings, I can tell who they are and where they come from by the way they talk. If you address academia, they all want to talk about, you all want to talk kind of, like 5 stories higher than they live at. Dr. Gipp, your treatise on the second aorist tense there in 2 Corinthians it was epic. Now, if you heard 2 guys talking like that, what would you guys do? Let's talk about guns. Right? If you address academia, it goes over the head of the common man, and he does nothing with it. But the most dangerous person on this planet, it's not a preacher. The most dangerous person on this planet is the common man with a perfect Bible. But if you address the common man, then you guys get something. That's why the most important word in my history book is understandable history of the Bible. Because if the common man gets it, he goes and does something with it, but academia is offended that you have not addressed them. And I get some flack, from those guys on that. But guys, Vulgate, the original Latin translation of the Antiochian manuscripts was called Common. When it was translated in 157 AD into Syrian, they named it the Peshitta. Do you know what that word means in Syrian? Common. So you have 2 of the second century's most important translations, one into Latin, one into Syrian, and they became so well known that they swept their areas by usage, and they became known as the Common Bible. And if you read your Bible, if you remember this, guys, the Pharisees were academia. But doesn't it say in the Bible, but the common men heard him gladly? And so God had to put this book in common language. So here's Henry VIII, and he says, I want my people to have their Bible in vulgar, common English. And that was the same thing that King James desired. So in 15, if you're looking on the back of the second page, second paragraph at the top, in 1535, Miles Coverdale says the first complete Bible. Here's what Coverdale did. He took Tyndale's New Testament. He sifted through it. He took some of the stuff that Tyndale had done. I know Tyndale had done Joshua. He might have done the Pentateuch. But he took what Tyndale had done, and then he finished it off. And so he printed the first complete English Bible in modern English, though the language itself, as I told you, was not solidified yet. It was not cured. But he printed it in English. It was first complete Bible, translated into English. William Tyndale, if you look at the paragraph, died before he could realize his dream of placing a copy of the entire Bible in English into the hands of the common people. Although he had worked on portions of the Old Testament, he was not able to complete it. With his death, this task fell to Miles Coverdale. Coverdale was working with him, who had worked with Tyndale on his English translation. It must have blessed Tyndale as he languished in a prison cell awaiting death to hear that his old friend, Miles Coverdale, had completed the work, and in 1535, a year before Tyndale was to die, published it. Coverdale's Bible was the first complete Bible to be translated into English using the pure text from Antioch. Okay, now I'm going to give you guys a kind of a quiz. Remember I gave you a test yesterday and I told you how to pass? And I bet you blew it. So I'm going to give you one more chance. Okay. You see up here where it says number 17, William Tyndale? Okay. The Bible he printed is known as the Tyndale Bible. Can you figure out why? Yeah. Okay, so you see the second one, Miles Coverdale. Do you know what the Bible he translated, do you know what it was known as? The Coverdale Bible. So that brings us to this one, the Thomas Matthews Bible. Would anybody like to guess who translated that one? Not Thomas Matthews. Thomas Matthews didn't exist. Now, there probably was somebody in England named Thomas Matthews, but he had nothing to do with that Bible. The guy that printed the Thomas Matthews Bible was a guy named John Rogers, which I think in Greek comes out Thomas Matthews. But here's what it says. John Rogers had worked with Tyndale and Coverdale on translation of the Bible. Seeing Tyndale's fate And fearing he too would be arrested and burned, he used the alias Thomas Matthews. Thomas Matthews was actually two of the names of his children. I think he had 10 kids, and one of his sons was Thomas, and one of them was Matthew. So he took two of his sons' names and called the John Rogers Bible, it should have been, he called it the Thomas Matthews Bible, because he knew if he put his name on it, he might end up getting burned at the stake. So he had a Thomas Matthews Bible, and then got burned at the stake. Do you ever stop thinking about this? If the guy had just put his name on it, he'd be famous. John Rogers had, seeing Tyndale's fate and fearing he too would be arrested and burned, he used the alias Thomas Matthews when he published his own English translation in 1537. This Bible caught the eye of England's King Henry VIII, who authorized it to be sold to the public at large and read by the public. Ironically, the man who changed his name to escape the stake died on it in 1555, while his friend and partner, Miles Coverdale, who operated under no false name, died of old age in 1569. So this is the order of the Bibles that, let's see how this works. Ooh, look at that. And no batteries. That's amazing. All right. So in 1525, you have the Tyndale, which actually is a New Testament. And then in 1535, you have the Coverdale. Now, keep in mind, we're now looking at translations into English that were translated from the same Greek text that your King James Bible is translated from. These are the Bibles that, this is the text that came out of Antioch. You know, I told you this list, if you look at it, there's 560 Bibles. And what I tell people is there's really not 560 Bibles. There's actually not even 500 Bibles. There's not actually 400 Bibles or 300 Bibles. There's not 200 Bibles. There's not actually 100 Bibles. There's not 50 Bibles. There's not 25 Bibles. There's not 10 Bibles. Guys, there's not 5 different Bibles out there. There's not 3 different Bibles. But there's not one. There's only ever been 2. Because Greek manuscripts, every Bible out there has been printed from a Greek text that comes from one of 2 places. Either Antioch in Syria, which was the head of the New Testament church, or Alexandria, Egypt, which was the head of academia. Everybody remember all those apostles that rushed down to Egypt to evangelize it in the book of Acts? You know what God said? Head for Europe. Get as far away from that place as you can. So if you walk into a Bible bookstore and say, Gipp, look right there, 25 Bibles. How can you say there's only one? There's only 2. See that King James? That's Antioch. The other 24, they're Alexandria. There's only 2 Bibles. And when you look at this, everything you look at, 560? Nope. Every Bible on a sheet of paper you have in front of you either came from Antioch or Alexandria. There's not 560. There's not 500. There are 2 Bibles represented on these 15 sheets of paper, 15 pages you got. In 1537, then you had the Matthews. And then Miles Coverdale was asked to look at verse. Look at number 20. In 1538, he was asked if he would just kind of go over these and make some corrections. You say, how can you correct a Bible? You can if it's got a mistake in it. You say, weren't those a perfect word of God? Absolutely not. They were on the right track, but the language hasn't healed yet or been solidified yet. And there's another reason why, and I'll talk to you about that. But look at number 20. In 1538, Miles Coverdale was commissioned by Thomas Cromwell, secretary to Henry VIII, and Archbishop Thomas Cranmer to complete a revision of Matthew's Bible to be used in churches. Due to its large size, and it was a very large Bible, this Bible became known as the Great Bible. It is also sometimes referred to as the Cromwell Bible because he initiated the translation, or Cranmer Bible because he wrote the preface. It's sometimes called the White Church Bible because that was the name of the printer. And it's also known as the chained Bible because it was chained to the altar of the Anglican Church so that no one would walk off with it. They'd have to have a strong back, but they'd have to do it. All right, then after that, number 21, you have the Taverner. The Taverner Bible, 1539. Now, I got to tell you something. I do not proofread people's books. I am working on about 5 books right now, and every now and then somebody will send me an unsolicited manuscript, and they'll say, I'm writing a book, would you proofread it? And I said, no. Well, I want you to publish it. I said, well, the company, I have some protocols for my company, for everything to be proofread, and I'm out of the loop. That does 2 things. Number 1, it frees up my time. Secondly, if one of my friends writes a book and it's a dud, I didn't reject it. My reader did. Now, I just had a guy, he wants us to publish his book, and he says, please, would you just please look at it? And I said, brother, you're asking me to lie to you. Because if I tell you I will look at it, I'm telling you guys, I spend my days looking at stuff, studying, researching, like I said, working on 5 books. I said, a guy sent me an unsolicited manuscript, and like 3 years later, I found it behind my chair in the living room. Now you say, don't you feel bad? No, I didn't ask him to send it. But if I'd have told that guy to send his manuscript, I'd have just never got it done. But I did this for a pastor in Australia many years ago. He wanted to write a book about the King James Bible. Now, you know what the Bible says in Psalm 12, 6 and 7? The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in the furnace of earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt preserve them, O Lord, thou shalt keep them, O Lord, thou shalt preserve them from this generation forever. I don't know what you think the 7 times are, but let me tell you, I don't know. Everybody likes to say, well, you know what that is? Well, I would like to know, and I really don't know that you know. And so here's what I've heard. I have heard that there were 7 English Bibles before the King James, or 6 before the King James, and it's the 7th. And so that's the 7 times. I have heard that the Bible is translated into 6 different languages, and English was the 7th, and that's the 7 times. I have heard that the first time is the 1611 King James Bible, and you know the King James Bible has, get this down, listen carefully, never been revised. The 1611 Bible has never been revised. There have been additions. And I think the 1769 is probably the text of the one you got in your lap. That was the 7th one. Well, this guy wrote this book in Australia, this pastor, and he said, would you proof it? And I said, okay, I'll do it for lots of money. And he pushed this thing about 6 Bibles before the King James, and the King James was the 7th English Bible, so that's the 7 times. The problem was, in his list of Bibles, he had, in 1456, Gutenberg was in the list. Well, Gutenberg was in Latin. So it doesn't belong in the list, so you scratch it out. Now how many you got? You got 6. And he needs a 7th one, doesn't he? So I said, Gutenberg doesn't belong here because it was in Latin. And then I wrote 2 other English Bibles that he didn't know about. I said, put one of these 2 in there, and then you'll have 7. It's like, far be it from me to discourage him for what he wants to do. But anyway, then you had the Richard Taverner, number 21, in 1539. This is a revision of Matthew's Bible made by Richard Taverner. Taverner was a Greek scholar and a promoter of Tyndale's Bible. He was also a follower of Thomas Cromwell and a staunch advocate of the Reformed Church in England. He was later a member of Parliament. Then 22 and 23 are close together because they're basically the same Bible of Geneva. 1557 was New Testament. The Old Testament was completed in 1560. The last one was printed, I think, around 1644. Now, some years ago, I think it was 2006, somebody started passing around a book called the Geneva 1599. Everybody got all excited about that because that was, well, if it's before the King James, it must be better. Why would you think that? The Model T was before what you're driving. Want one? I don't mean as a collector and to sell it. I mean, you want to drive it this winter? You heard of the New International Version? Corrupt? Mistakes in it? Yeah. How about this? NIV, and I'm pretty sure the ESV is the same thing. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 19. Take a look at it. Take a look at it in your Bible. And it's pretty well known by everybody that defends the King James Bible. And in 2 Samuel chapter 21, look at verse 19, and there was again a battle in Gob with Philistines, where Elhanan, the son of Jehoram, a Bethlehemite, slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite, the staff of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. Now you'll notice in that verse, the brother of is in italics, correct? So you know what they do with the ESV and the NIV? They pull the italics out and insert a contradiction. Because an NIV says, Jehoram, a Bethlehemite, slew Goliath the Gittite. Who slew Goliath in 1 Samuel 17? David. But in 2 Samuel 21, it was Elhanan. So they put a contradiction where there was none. Now, do you think that's wrong or right? Come on, guys. Yeah. I don't know why. Because the NIV was just following the Geneva. I've read the Geneva once. Once was enough. It's a good Bible. It's a good Bible. It's just not the perfect Word of God. So, in 1560, you had the Geneva. That was the Bible of the Puritans. Keep that in mind. Then look at the top of page 3. In 1568, you had the Bishop's Bible. That was the Bible of the Anglican Church. Look at the bishops. Well, let's read about the Geneva down there at the bottom of page 2, because it's all good. In 1553, Queen Mary took the throne of England. Unlike her predecessor, Henry VIII, Mary was more loyal to her Roman Catholic Church than to her people. Thus, shunned she the reign of terror on all who were caught trying to translate, print, or publish the Bible in English. Now, let me say this. This is Bloody Mary. She is known as Bloody Mary. King James' mother was Mary, Queen of Scots, two different individuals. Now, King James' mother was a loyal Romanist and killed a bunch of people. In fact, if you think about this, guys, I've had, again, along this line of why the 1611, not why something before or why something after it. Here's what you're going to find. Every Bible prior to the 1611 was one of two things. Keeping in mind, first off, English was not solidified, so it wasn't ready for the Bible yet. But every Bible, every one of these Bibles was one of two things. It was either the translation of one man or one group. The Geneva, the Anglicans wouldn't use that. They wouldn't have it in their church. That's a Puritan Bible. Do you think the Puritans would use the bishops? Not on your life. So you had those two were one group translations. These were all one man translations. You say, well, the King James didn't translate the King James Bible. I will tell you this, he could have. I don't know if you know this, but most monarchs were illiterate. What do we teach our kids? You learn this and do this and work hard, and someday you might grow up to be president. You could come from the gutter and be president. You just can't be a billionaire and do it. But let me ask you something. How did you get to the throne? Weren't you born of the royal family? So why do you need to read? You got people that'll read to you. King James was a tremendously educated man. At the age of 8, he could read a chapter of the Bible in Latin, translate the entire chapter into French, then translate the French into English. He was a tremendously intelligent and well-educated man, and could have been on his own translation committee, but he wasn't. But the King James Bible was not a one-man translation. It was not a one-group translation. Do you know who translated the King James Bible? A bunch of Puritans, along with a bunch of Anglicans. This is kind of like the Democrats and the Republicans. But you know what the Anglicans did? The Anglicans did on the King James Translation Committee. You know what they did? They kept that book right there from being a Puritan Bible. Do you know what the Puritans did? They kept that book right there from being an Anglican Bible. In fact, you know why this is a miracle? Do you know why the King James Bible is a miracle? Have you ever seen anything put together by a committee that was done right? You know what they say the definition of a camel is? A camel is a horse put together by a committee. Your King James Bible was put together by a committee of 47 guys. And it's perfect. I didn't say it's good. I said it's perfect. Not a mistake in it. Want an easy job? Everybody likes an easy job. I'm going to give you an easy job. Take a King James Bible, change one word, print it and publish it. You just took perfect and made it imperfect. That is an easy job. All right. Look at, I will keep reading. This dark chapter in English history is immortalized by Fox in Fox's book, famous Book of Martyrs, due to the persecution brought on by Mary. Work on the English Bible moved to a more safe location on the continent in 1560. An English translation was published in Geneva. By the way, you know I couldn't get over? You know, the Puritans tend to be Calvinistic. Today they call them Reformed. And the guys that are Reformed are saying, we need to go back to the 1599 Geneva. Do you know who, wait, now get this. King James came to the throne. I've heard people say this. Guys, you don't have to believe everything you hear. And here's what they say. Well, King James came to the throne and they hounded him until he said he would translate a new Bible. Really? Because he came to the throne, but not with that marker. Okay? He came to the throne in 1603. He's known as King James I of England, but actually he became King James VI of Scotland, because there were 5 King James before him. He became King James VI of Scotland when he was 13 months old. Would you give your kid? So in 1603, when Queen Elizabeth died, he came down from Scotland and became King James I of England. So in 1603, he became the king. In 1604, guess who came to him and said, we want a new translation? The people that were using the Geneva Bible. So when I get these people out there going, these Reformed people saying, well, we need to go back to the Geneva the Bible. Even their forefathers didn't want to use the Geneva. And when did he commission it? In 1605. So, guys, that's awful fast. That doesn't look like much pressure, okay? This was the middle of the paragraph, bottom page 2, and this was to be the second most popular English Bible. That's about the Geneva. In history, eclipsed only by the King James Bible of 1611. You know what people said? They said the King James Bible outsold the Geneva because King James stopped him from printing it and killed people for doing it. Then how come it was still being printed after he died? Well, he died in 1625, and look at the paragraph. They printed it. It was in print until 1644. This was the Bible that rode the decks of the Mayflower in the hands of the Pilgrims. Now, one of the things that the Reforms say about the Geneva, they say that it was the Bible of the Puritans, okay? Came out in 1560. Puritans came over here in 1620, and the Geneva was indeed their translation. Using logic, does it not make sense? They had a Geneva. Doesn't it? I'm not setting you up. I think they did. I think they did. But, and you can do this on your own, go on the internet and search for John Alden's Bible. John Alden was a Puritan, came over on the Mayflower, and it's on the internet, his King James Bible. So I'm not saying they all had a King James, but there's at least one on the boat. But let me help you with this. Let me see. We may get to this, and I may not have to do that. Yeah, I'll tell you about that later. Anyway, the Pilgrims came to the New World not to get rich or institute free enterprise, but to seek a place where they were free to worship God without the threat of governmental interference. This was the main principle upon which the United States of America was founded. Now let's look up at the bishops, top of page 3. The Bishop's Bible, with the passing of Queen Elizabeth, the Church of England. Oh, I was going to tell you. All right? You have Bloody Mary. That's not a drink. Okay? And she was not King James' mother, but she was before Elizabeth. And Elizabeth gets off the throne, but Mary, Queen of Scots. That was King James' mother. Then you have King James. And then you have his son Charles the First. Let me show you something. You know what Mary, Queen of Scots was? She's a Roman Catholic. Her son, because she was deposed when he was 13 years old, Scotland was ruled by a bunch of regents. That's the Greek word for adults. And it was ruled. Let me tell you what this guy said when he was 5 years old. Everybody paints this guy as some kind of a wuss. When he was 5 years old, he was addressing the regents that are running his country because he was too young. And he says, to this effect, he says, be careful what you decide, because when you're done, you'll answer to God and me. Well, what's a 5-year going to do? Hit you with a block? But Charles, his son, became Charles I, and guess what he was? But King James was raised by two tutors. One of them was a guy by the name of Peter Young, and Peter Young was a disciple of this guy, John Knox. And King James was raised a Presbyterian. You have, I call it a parenthesis of purity, where it was Roman Catholic, boom, stops. In comes the guy that's not a Roman Catholic, gives us a Bible, passes off the scene, and it goes right back to Roman Catholic. So, I'm sorry, I'm not big on coincidences, and I don't think that was a coincidence. Bishop's Bible, with the passing of Queen Mary of England, Church of England, returned to its pursuit of the English Bible. The Great Bible was too large to be of practical use, and the Geneva was the Bible of an exclusive group, the Puritans. Thus, by 1568, the Church of England sanctioned a revision of the Great Bible that would be used among its people. The Bible became known as the Bishop's Bible and was used by the Anglican Church, which is also known as the Church of England. Now, the only English Bible back in those days that was not a King James, or was not from Antioch, is number 25 there, 1582, the Douay Rheims, the Roman Catholic Church, had been trying unsuccessfully to stop the translation of the Bible into English. It was plain by the closing years of the 16th century that they were failing in this endeavor. It was finally decided that if the English people wanted a Bible in English, then an official Roman Catholic edition would be provided them. The work became known as the Douay Rheims version. Unfortunately, their source, a biblical text, was badly tainted. Rather than being translated from either Hebrew or Greek, the Douay Rheims text used was Jerome's Latin translation of the old, long-rejected Alexandrian text. It can be expected this translation was wet tinder and never caught fire unless it was thrown into the oven. So those are the Bibles that you have until this one. And in 1611, you got the King James Bible. And people say, well, it it did that. It did good because it was authorized by him to be used in the Church of England. There's no history of anything him ever saying that it was to be used. In fact, you know what he wanted? I'll tell you what he thought. He wanted his people to have the Bible in English, the English people. You know, I don't know if you know this, but King James was the guy that united the warring tribes of Scotland and Ireland and England, and he built the foundation for what was known to later be known as the British Empire. Now, sidebar, do you know what the English flag looks like? Not what you think. You've seen the Union Jack, have you not? That is not the English flag. The English flag, the flag of England, you'll see it sometimes. If you're looking, if there's some kind of a parade and you're watching TV and you'll see somebody waving a flag and you'll see an odd-looking flag, here's what you'll see. And that's it. It's a white flag with a red cross on it. That's called the Cross of St. George. And that is the flag of England. That is not the flag of anybody else. The flag of Scotland looks like this. Now, they fill it in a lot better than I do. Now, and sometimes up in Scotland, you'll see that flag flying. Now, let me ask you something. If you saw two groups, didn't know who they were, didn't know what their flags meant, but one was waving that flag and one was waving that one, wouldn't you say, those guys are not together? Right? So what do you do when you unite these guys with these guys and you need to get a flag? Well, what you do, and this is what King James did. He took the flag of England and superimposed it over the flag of Scotland and came up with what is known as the Union Jack. He was the designer of the flag known as the Union Jack. And he put that flag together to show the unity of England and Scotland. That's a sidebar. It's got to do with your Bible, but he's quite a guy. All right, if you look at your paper, it talks about the 17th century in the King James Bible. In 1603, three things came together that was a result in the greatest literary work ever to be published in the English language. What I started to say, I interrupted myself. He wanted a Bible for the people on England, on that island. He never knew it would go beyond the shores of England. That became the Bible that has swept the world. You know, I read a lot of stuff on Greek manuscripts or Bibles, and a lot of stuff is written in the 1800s. And you know, they don't refer to the King James Bible. In the 1800s, they don't refer to the King James Bible. You know what they call it? Our Common Bible, or our English Bible. And when they said our Common Bible or our English Bible, the King James was so common that everybody knew when they said common or English, it was the King James Bible. And that's what happened. It became the Bible of the English-speaking people. In 1603, three things changed. Three things came together that would result in the greatest literary work ever to be published in the English language, the King James Bible. The first was the ascension to the English throne of the Scottish King James VI, who promptly became known as James I of England. This great king was to unite the warring kingdoms of England, Ireland, and Scotland, and laid the foundation for what was to become known as, in history, as the British Empire. Did you ever hear that famous statement, the sun never goes down on the British Empire? Do you know what that means? That doesn't mean that it's going to, like it's going to, the British Empire is going to, peak and then go downhill. That's not talking about the empire is diminishing. It meant that on our globe, yes, it's a globe. Anyway, on our globe, the British Empire encompassed so much that there was never, ever a time, no matter where the sun was, that it was not shining on some portion of the British Empire. So when they say the sun never sets on the British Empire, what they meant was that when it was midnight in England, somewhere on the other side of the globe, the sun was shining, and some of the turf that it was shining on was part of the British Empire. So that's what that means, the sun will never sets on the British Empire. Second, try as they might, those who had translated the Bible into English faced two overpowering problems. We already talked about that, one man, one group translation. By the end of the 16th century, these two groups had had enough. No sooner had King James ascended his throne that they requested of him that he initiate the translation of the Bible into English to replace the popular Puritan and Anglican editions then available. I will tell you this. I was over in England a couple of times, but I think it was 2009. And you ever hear this? You ever hear people say that there were actually two 1611 King James Bibles because there were two companies at Cambridge and they produced one, and there were two companies at Oxford and they produced one? Have you ever heard that? Anybody ever heard that? Because that's almost correct. There weren't two King James Bibles in 1611. There were three. There were 6 companies, 2 of them in Oxford, 2 of them in Cambridge, and 2 of them in Westminster. And they all produced a King James Bible. I have a book it's a reproduction, about it's in the 1800s. And the guy is literally comparing 3 Bibles that on the title page say 1611. Not a 1611, one printed in 1612, one printed in 1613. They were all 3 printed in 1611. He's comparing the 3 original King James Bibles, and they are word perfect, except one will say ye, and the other one will say ye. One will say, as I mentioned earlier, though you can find said spelled 4 ways in one Bible, if you have a 1611 King James facsimile, that is one of these, and it has the word said spelled 4 different ways. But one of them it have the word said spelled in the same. You look at one verse in 3 King James Bibles. One says S-A-Y-D, one says S-A-Y-D-E, and the other one says S-A-I-D-E. But as I mentioned already, the smallest unit of preservation is a word, so the word is preserved. So I'm over in England, and we're in Westminster, and I'm with a missionary and some guys from his church, and there's this guide. He is, telling everybody about this and this. And so we're in this large room, we're looking at stuff, and the guide comes over and he says, "Would you come with me, sir?" And I thought, uh-oh, he found out. And he took me, and he found out what I did. One of the guys told him what I do. So he said, "I want to show you something that is not part of the tour." And he took me upstairs in Westminster and opened up a room, and he said, this is the office of John Harmar. John Harmar was one of the King James translators. He said, "You are now standing in the room that one of the King James translators did his work in," which was pretty neat, pretty exciting. So by the 16th century, those groups had enough. Here's what he told me. This figure right here. If you look page 3, number 26, 1, 2, 3, toward the end of the 3rd paragraph, it says the work was begun in 1604 and was completed in May of 1611. He said that the first recorded sale of a King James Bible is in May of 1611. They say, "Oh man, that's 5 months after the year started." No, that's 1 month after the year started. Because in 1611, it was up until, tell you in a second. It was up until 1752. Before 1752, they started the year on April 1st, just like in the Bible. That was the Julian calendar. There, I got it in your notes. Anyway, that was the Julian calendar, and so The 1611, if they'd have sold it about 2 months earlier, it'd be the good old 1610. And when they changed in 1752 to the Gregorian calendar, there were a bunch of stalwarts who said, we're not going to do it. We're going to keep celebrating New Year's on the 1st of April instead of 1st of January. And so to pressure those people into joining everybody else, when they began their New Year on April 1st, they began to play tricks on them and called them April Fools. And that's where April Fool's Day comes from. I already gave you this. The third was the coalescing of the English language, and that tells you some of the things that took place. Now, starting here, we're not going to go through all of these because we've got 560. But starting with number 27, you're looking at some of the Bibles that were just from the 17th century, the 1600s. I will tell you what some of them are. From the 17th century, of course, you got the King James. There was a paraphrased New Testament in 1653, an annotated Bible in 1657. There was a Romanized New Testament. Ooh, we don't want that, in 1660. There was Baxter's in 1685 and Clark's version in 1690. Then came the 18th century. And in the 18th century, that would be the very top of page 4, you have this. Look at number 35. 1729, the New Testament in Greek and English. As far as I know, I might be wrong, but as far as I know, that is the earliest Greek-English Bible. In other words, sometimes you'll buy a Greek-English interlinear, and on one page it'll have the Greek, that page of the Bible in Greek, and across the page it'll have it in English. And that was Mace's, Daniel Mace, his New Testament of 1729. Another famous one, though we don't need it, look at number 42, and that is John Wesley. John Wesley was a great man, and he translated a New Testament and put his notes in it. And the one I want to call your attention to is number 56, and it's in bold, 56 and 58. It says in 1777. What happened in 1776? We declared our independence from England, right? And where's this Bible come from? Yeah. And weren't we rebelling against a king? And what is this Bible called? Yeah, you know that just might not be a real popular name in 1777. So it says, with the Declaration of Independence in 1776, importing a Bible whose name included an English king became difficult. Therefore, Robert Atkin printed this New Testament, which was a King James Bible, under a more acceptable name. This is the first scripture printed in the United States. And then down to 58, it says the Atkin Bible, the complete King James Bible. It was sanctioned by Congress on September 12th, 1782. This was the first complete Bible printed in this country, and it's a King James Bible in every way except what the title page says. It says it's called an Atkins 1782. It is a King James 1611. Just for clarity's sake. Nah, we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. When do I have to be done? Friday? Okay, let me, we're about halfway. Okay, I should be done by then. Probably at least 8:29. Look at number 60, I think it's 61. And look at this. What's interesting about this, the Thomas Bible, which is not particularly interesting. It's a King James Bible with the Apocrypha inserted between the Testaments because it had been in it originally, thrown out because it was never considered Scripture by the translators. But the numbering ends with the Old Testament, the page numbers. In other words, the page number ends with the last page of the Old Testament, then you have the Apocrypha, then the next consecutive page number begins with the first page of Matthew. They didn't even number the Apocrypha. But it says, in an edition printed in 1797, the title page states, printed in the United States of Colombia. Now, that does not mean it was printed down in South America. We know this as America, but did you ever hear that song, Colombia, the gem of the ocean? That's your country. And when this nation was young, even though we always say America, it was also known as Colombia. And there's a Bible printed in the United States of Colombia, which are these United States. Look at number 64. And this is interesting, Brown's Self-Interpreting Bible, a King James Bible with self-helps, published by subscription. In other words, you bought a little bit of it at a time. And what the guy did is he didn't have the money to print the whole thing, so he'd print this much and say, you subscribe to buy this, send me the money for this, you get it. Now that gives me the money to print the next section. Now you get it, that gives me the money. So he sent it out in portions, and it says the first name on the list of subscribers was George Washington Esquire, President of the United States. So I guess he was a King James Bible nut, probably a Ruckmanite before Ruckman ever lived. All right, now we'll go to the 19th century. We can breeze through that. That's pretty quick because there's not a lot there. That was the 18th century. 19th century, the not a good one, but the most prominent Bible of the 19th century, which would be the 1800s. Look at number 138. Number 138 on page 6. And 142, because 138 designates the New Testament being done, and 142, 1884, designates that, the Old Testament, the whole Bible. This is the first officially sanctioned Bible translation sanctioned by the Church of England, Convocation of Canterbury, since the publication of the 1611. And the Revised Version, what they were told to do, of course, everybody says there's mistakes in the King James Bible. Let me ask you a question. Now, there might be somebody here is going to say yes. Do we have a brain surgeon here? Okay. What if you had to have brain surgery? Would you want a good doctor? What if 47 of the best brain surgeons in the world got together to examine your case? That'd be a little bit confidence building, wouldn't it? And then some doofus who, like he read one publication, one volume of Prevention magazine, or he got something off the internet, said, I know more about brain surgery than those 47 guys. I get a computer program on brain surgery, and I can tell you how to do it. Who would you trust? You think you might trust those 47 guys that did it? Isn't it funny? I see people, they never pontificate on being smarter than a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon, but they pontificate on being smarter than 47 Greek scholars that translated the King James Bible. Do you know that one of the guys that translated the King James Bible used to debate, several of them used to do this, they would publicly debate in public in Greek. Now see, here's your problem. You run into some scholar from today and he knows more than you. What you understand is he don't know more than them. One of the King James translators, he was so proficient in Greek and Hebrew that if you were going to teach Greek or Hebrew in any university in England, he had to decide if you knew it well enough. And that's one of your King James translators. So when somebody says, I heard this a number of years ago, back in the 80s, this 14-year-old kid got up and corrected the Bible from the Greek. Now, what do you think a 14-year-old really knows about Greek? But today, you got a Bible program, and it says this Greek word should be this way, and so that makes you smarter than 47 guys. Yeah, get that for your next brain surgery. So here's what the Revised Version is supposed to be. They've been convinced that there were mistakes in the King James Bible. They were told not to change the text, just to correct what they thought were the mistakes. And two sleazy characters named Westcott and Hort, Bruce Foss Westcott, Fenton John Anthony Hort, had printed their own Greek New Testament, not from Antioch, but from Alexandria. And and secreted it in and got everybody using it. So it's not based on, it's supposed to be a revised. If something's revised, doesn't that mean there was something before it? This ain't revised because there was nothing before it. It's not a revision of the King James Bible. It's an entirely different Bible. Then they realized they had a problem. You know what it was? They're about to publish a Bible in English based on a Greek text that has not been published. And they knew that everybody would go crazy. Well, you got a secret text. So 1 week before the publication of the Revised Version, they published their Greek text so that they could technically say it had been published, but it's kind of like we have to pass it to find out what's in it. Who's going to study an entire Greek text in 7 days and refute it? So there was no time to refute it, and they could say it was on a published text. These guys, if they were alive today, they could probably end up president. All right, look at number 160. And now we're in the 20th century, 160, 1901. That's the American Standard Version. The American Standard Version. Do you know how much these guys, do you ever hear these guys, we want the Bible in the language of the people? Doesn't that sound, yeah. You know what the publishers, the translators of the American Standard did? They said, if you'll let us, to the RV, if you'll let us use your copyright, we won't do our translation for 15 years. We will let those people not have a perfect Bible so you can make your money off your RV, then we'll bring ours out. That's dedication. And this finally went bankrupt. You know, the Word of God going bankrupt because God wasn't blessing it. Look at number 259. 259, that is 1946, that's the Revised Standard Version New Testament. 269 is the 1952, that's the Old Testament going along with it. That was a revision of the Revised Version. So the Revised Version got revised into the American Standard. The American Standard got revised into the Revised Standard. I don't know why they call it Standard because nobody used it. Look at number 341. In 341, 1973, you have the New International Version, the New Testament. And that has been revised several times since. I want to call your attention to number 371 and number 425. 371. 371 is a 1982 New King James Version. You guys heard of it, right? Right. A number of years ago, I debated on national television, the head of that translation committee, a guy by the name of Art Farstad. He's a nice man. I believe he's saved. I believe he loved the Lord. He just made a mistake here. That's all. And then 425, you have the 1994 New King James. Did you ever hear anybody say this? Which King James Bible do you use? A 1611 or 1638 or 1762 or 1769? And when I hear them talking those numbers, I think, how many stitches would you like? Let me ask the men. The men will have the answer. There might be some women who probably have the answer. Guys, if I said, tomorrow I'm going out and buying a 1911, somebody tell me what I'm buying. Oh, I'm not buying a 1911 Ford? You know I'm buying a gun? What caliber? 1911 45, huh? Yeah, Colt automatic pistol. Except that in 1945, when they brought that out, or in 1911 when they brought it out, you only got it in 45 caliber. But today, you can buy a 1911, the same mechanism in a 9mm, or Smith & Wesson 40 cal. But it's a 1911. And that Bible in your lap is basically the last edition, the 1769, but you know what it is? It's the 1611 because it reads the same. So when somebody says that, here's what I ask them. Well, which New King James do you use? The 1982 or the 1994? You know why there's a difference? Open your Bible to Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6. All right, in Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6, there's a prophetic reference to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And it says, what are these wounds in thine hands? Correct? Okay. The 1982 New King James says this, what are these wounds in your hands? Now I told you, I'm not for changing any word, but the prophecy is still there, correct? They just said in your hands instead of in thine hands, right? But if you have a 1994, here's what they did. They made changes in the New King James in 1994 and didn't tell anybody. I got both of them that I use for doing this. And in the 1994 New King James, it says, what are these wounds between your arms? And you just lost a prophetic reference to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and you can have two New King James versions looking at the same verse, and they both read radically different. So when somebody says the thing about, well, there's just been so many King James, yeah, but they all read the same. That one doesn't. Number 451, just about done, 451. 451 was the Holman Christian. Now, you see where it says Standard Bible? That's not true. I don't mean because it's not standard. When it came out, it was called the Holman Christian Study Bible, not Standard Bible. And then they, somewhere along the line, they decided to change it to Standard Bible. Now, 21st century, look at number 460. And 460, you got the King James 2000 version. Right under it, you had the King James 21, 21st century. Everybody's going to try to get this. I didn't bring a piece of notepaper for you. I'll try to get this off the top of my head. I better not do that. In the 19th century, there were 301 translations. It averages about 3.1 translations a year. In the 20 years since this century has begun, there's been 117. I think if I just wrote the figure down, it's on my desk at the motel, but I think that's 8.8 translations per year. Brother, and you say, well, we must have the Bible somewhere. The Bible's nowhere. It's here, but it's nowhere else. And let me tell you the major difference. That RV, even though it was corrupt, it was started by a religious organization, the Confraternity Edition, or the Confraternity. And previously, not that this makes it right, translations were called by religious bodies. Now they're initiated by publishing companies, because everybody wants a piece of the action. I'll just tell you this. I got a publishing company, and a few years ago, one of my guys was talking to a lady over at Oxford Press in England, and he just, a crazy thought came to him. He said, do you guys even, you print all kinds of Bibles, right? Oh, yeah. You still print King James? Oh, yeah. He said, so of all the Bibles you print, what's the percentage of King James? This was about 20 years ago. She said 65% of the Bibles we print are King James. Now, who'd have thought that? If you go online, you know what you'll find out? People who read their Bibles, that's kind of a qualifier, not people who have one. People who read their Bibles, 85% of people who read their Bibles read a King James Bible, because King James Bible believers believe the book. I just want to show you a couple of things. Look at, remember that Holman Christian Study Bible? All right, 451, it came out in the year 2000. Now look at 486 down at the bottom of page 13. Well, there it is, the Holman Christian Standard Bible. Oh, wait a second. Look at 492 on page 14. Oh, 2004, the Holman Christian Study Bible. Look at number 566 on the last page, page 15. Wasn't that amazing? They dropped Holman. They just called it the Christian Standard Bible, a major revision of the 2009 Holman Christian Standard Bible. So you got a Holman Bible printed in 2000, 2002, 2006, 2003, 2004, and 2017. Which Holman Study Bible do you use? Because they make a change every time. How about the Living New Testament? Look at 1996. I don't think I have the. I'll look at I got to think 439. 439. There it is. The New Living Translation, 1996. Now look at 491 on page 14. 2004, New Living Translation. Look at 510 in 2007, New Living Translation. Look at 557 in 2015, New Living Translation. And look at the very next one, or just, no, I'm sorry, not the next one. Look at, 558. 558, nope, that's not it. 559, New Living Translation, 2016, only that was Roman Catholic. Now, isn't it funny people say, well, which King James do you use? And nobody says, well, which Living Translation do you use? You know what these guys never do? Come back. I'm done. But have you ever heard that your King James Bible is 400 years old? It's out of step with the times, right? Yeah, I've heard that. If it's so out of step with the times and it's so archaic, you know what I wonder? How come every time, if they brought out a Bible tomorrow, they'd compare it to the 400-year-old King James? You know, that'd be kind of like Chevy. You guys Chevy and Ford men here? Could you imagine if Chevy said, you need to buy our new Impala. It's so much farther advanced than the Ford Model T. Why, we have electric start. You got to crank that. We have power windows. It doesn't even have windows. We have power locks. It doesn't have door handles. Wouldn't Ford say something like this? Now look, a Model T is great antique. But wouldn't Ford say, why don't you compare your Impala to our new Taurus? You know what you'll never hear? Never, ever, ever will you hear a new translation come out and say, we have corrected the errors of the last new translation. In that John Ankerberg program in 1995, when we were debating those guys, Art Farstad came over to me afterwards. The funniest thing happened. There were 8 of us. We were all making a last statement. And it got to Art Farstad, New King James, and he was majority text, but he was pretty much TR. And I think he brought up the subject of the last 12 verses of Mark, which had never been brought up in 8 programs, 8 half-hour programs, or 8-hour programs, had never been brought up. And the guy sitting next to him, who was working on the New American Standard, he said, well, I was going to say something, but I have to address what he said. He tried to correct Farstad. And Farstad came over to me afterwards, and he was very, what's that word? Just kind of introverted. And he came up, and he shook my hand, and he said, I'm sorry I couldn't help you more, but, and walked away. You know what the finished sentence was? But I work with these guys. One of those guys was his student. Guys, they never criticize each other's work. They will bring out a Bible that's different than it, so they must think there was an error. But how come if this is so out of date and it doesn't matter anymore, how come everyone, if they brought one out tomorrow, they compare it to the one they said isn't even relevant? Why don't they correct the errors? There's plenty of errors in the ones that are out there now, are there not? Okay, sorry to take too much time. Lord bless you.